everyone, welcome to the All Inclusive podcast, where each week I chat with industry experts and diversity, equity and inclusion executives from the world's leading global brands who share their knowledge, experience and actionable takeaways to help employers create cultures of belonging where everyone can thrive. Today, I'm joined by Tara Wilson. Tara is the Chief Diversity and Chief Operating Officer of Zūm Rails. Hi, Tara.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I think the best thing to do is why don't we kick off with our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to where you are today.
Great, thank you. So as you mentioned, I'm currently the COO and Chief Diversity Officer at Zūm Rails, and I just joined that company at the beginning of the year. Being in the payment space for as long as I have, it was just an opportunity I couldn't turn down. Just to share, it is the best software I've ever worked with. So it's really exciting to be at the place I am in my career, to be working with a group of individuals that are innovative and unique and consumer driven. So I'm just excited to be a part of that Zūm Rails journey. And just to share my story, 20 years ago, it hurts me to say 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, I started in data entry in the payment space. And I sat in as many seats as possible to learn as much as possible about the different areas of business. I guess my approach was that I felt by learning about each area of the business, it would help me build a stronger knowledge of the company and how each area contributed to its success. And I feel like that really paid off because I got a really unique perspective of how processes can make or break an organization, how much alignment matters, and how much people matter. I went from frontline employee to manager of the department I was in, the manager of the departments I worked with, and then director of operations for the whole team. And I was responsible for frontline teams, as well as the teams that worked alongside those frontline teams and administrative day-to-day tasks. Taking 20,000 calls or contacts a month, 4,000 escalations a month. So meaning first contact resolution and onboarding around 1,000 accounts a month and managing a large team in the Philippines as a BPO as well as locally. So it was an incredible learning experience that I was very happy to have. That being said, it wasn't always easy. I experienced a lot of challenges with imposter syndrome during that time as I was growing through the ranks, being one of the only women in leadership. And I'm sure we'll dig into that later. But I stayed with that company for 13 years. And when I approached management for the opportunity to grow, from a director to VP, I'd been in the director role for about 4 years. I was told there was no opportunity of growth for me. So at the same time, I think it was probably the same week, I had another organization reach out to me for a VP of operations role. And I thought, if this isn't the universe telling me to get out of my comfort zone and move on, I don't know what it is. So I did that. I moved on to a new company after 13 years in July of 2015. And I was the VP of operation, managing the Canadian and eventually the UK side of the business, focusing on streamlining and organizations of areas that needed support and attention in operations, as well as a focus on, employee collaboration, satisfaction, address some attrition situations that were happening. And what I learned in that first 2 years going to a new organization was I was good at my job and I did deserve to be where I was, and that people valued and respected my opinion, something that I wasn't feeling very good about at the end of my last role for a good chunk of time. So just to say, I have a lot of conversations with people about, when is it time to move on? Trust your gut. Your gut, when you feel that feeling of, I don't feel good, listen to it. So really, after what I believe to be a period of my career, the period of my career where I developed what my brand was, and I started to get confident, I was approached to manage a full division that wasn't related to my expertise at all, not even a little. So it was terrifying for me. It took me too long probably to say yes. What if I can't do it? The learning curve is going to be too hard. I'm doing what I'm doing really well. Why should I change? Kind of all the negative chatter in my head. And then I had great advocates that I was kind of pinging, and they said, just take the risk, take the jump. So I went into that division and that I had no prior knowledge of, and just kind of, as they say, you fake it till you make it, and that's exactly what I did. The experience was credible. I managed a full company from sales to marketing to development, onboarding, support, finance, and even knowledge management, and learned a lot during those 4 years from a P&L standpoint, implementing large systems, helping define processes to line the whole company, our division and other areas with the company, and a lot more. And so during those 4 years, I grew from a general manager to an SVP to chief operating officer, and really grateful for my time in that space. And I had a really wonderful leader during those 4 years who was a huge advocate for my success and growth. And that made a big difference for me in again, kind of how I saw myself, and starting to really mute that chatter that had been going on in my head for many years. So after building the business for 4 years and seeing many successors waiting in the wings, when Zūm approached me for the opportunity, not only as chief operating officer, but chief diversity officer, I knew the timing was right, not only because I had all these worthy employees who were ready to take the next step, and that took me leaving the organization, but because selfishly, I wanted to be part of what Zūm had to offer. And so now we're caught up. This is today.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think you've touched on so many good things there with regards to like in your journey. I think the imposter syndrome is something that across the board, that it's something that quite a few people struggle with, and it's something that I have myself struggled with as well. It is a difficult thing to try to overcome, but I think for what you've said in what you've experienced is that you had a really good leader to help and to drown out those voices, which is great. And I can only imagine, like as you explained, how much it was able to propel you forward and to feel more confident that you can do the job.
Yeah, it made a huge difference for me to know that someone was in my corner. And I think that it's a challenge for a lot of people when they're growing, because they say, I don't have that leader, I don't have that person. And my advice is always just find any advocate. It can be a friend who's there, who's going to give you, who's going to listen to you, who's going to hear you, who's going to, let you bounce ideas off of. But he was, I'll shout him out. It's Lorenzo and Pellegrino. And he fought for me. And that meant something. And he cared for me professionally and personally. And that set the tone for the whole business.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's one of the key thread in terms of leaders today. They need to be more human. I think they need to try to add that human element, because it will make such an impact to your employees and to their own success. Because I mean, the success of your employees will only show to everyone how great you can lead.
Completely agree.
So you've given us some background in terms of your career and your journey into kind of operations and now being the chief operating officer. I'm curious to know the diversity, equity, and inclusion side of your role, and why are you doing DEI?
Sure. During my many years of growing up in the business, I decided to get involved with a lot of networks, payments and fintech. And then there started to be kind of subgroups of those networks, which was women in fintech, women in leadership, women in business, women in payments, and I guess just general mentoring networks. And I started to have really valuable and honest conversations with other members. And actually, though, in the mentoring networks and people who I was mentoring, and I guess I just saw an opportunity to support others in a way that I always wasn't supported. So I wanted to be an advocate for others' success. And the more I started to have these types of conversations, the more I started to notice themes like, or questions like, does this sound right to you? Do you think that this is okay that this happened to me? Is this something you've experienced on your journey? The big one was, do you think I was overly emotional? Do you think I reacted emotionally? Am I overreacting? And so what I saw was that people were asking themselves the same questions that I was asking myself years earlier. And that, again, imposter syndrome was not a Tara thing, but an everyone thing. And this was before Lean In, and you read about imposter syndrome like this. I was just starting to realize, okay, well, it's not just me that feels like I'm not worthy. And that women also were not seeing, and unfortunately still don't in some situations, a lot of other women in senior management or C-level positions or board positions. And I started to wonder how many more decades we're going to keep having these types of conversations. So I guess it was organically, I really started to dig in and recognize that some of my experiences as a woman in business related to, and I want to be very, very clear, not the same as, but related to what many marginalized groups could be going through. And of course, they go through much more. I recognize my privilege, but I think what I saw was that there was an opportunity to try and learn about those specific experiences and feelings that were coming from microaggressions, from lack of inclusion, the void of feeling that you don't belong, and for me to try to appreciate them, be aware of them. And then I didn't have a plan after that. I was just like, okay, I just want to learn. I want to be a silent party learning about this. I'm not ready to contribute. I just want to hear. Just want to listen. So I guess besides wanting to dive into intersectionality, and for those who maybe are listening that don't know, which is, my opinion is how multiple identities interact to create unique patterns of oppression. I wanted to try and help people not feel the way I felt growing up in this space, understand the way they felt and what experiences they were going through, and try to help them not have that. And then again, I was like, okay, let me learn a little bit more, and then I'll figure out, what I'm going to do with this. And so I think that's why I'm here today. I feel like I have some of those experiences, and I know that I haven't even come close to some of the experiences that others have shared with me and that I've been, learning about. So I want those around me to be proud of sharing their thoughts, to be comfortable to show up as they are and who they are every day. I want those around me to share their unique perspectives openly, because they are so different than the other 5 people's perspectives sitting in the meeting with them. And maybe that could help bring aha moments to the business and make us better. There's lots of stats that prove diversity is necessary for growth inside a business. So I guess to circle back, I don't think, you do diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think you believe in it because you're committed to trying to build a better, more inclusive business world. And I think if you can make an impact at the business level, that maybe some of that could creep into a personal level. And then, hey, look, you've opened people's eyes to different perspectives, and you're actually helping the world, become a better place. And really, like, who could ask for a better cause than that? So that's kind of my journey and my thought process on why I'm here doing what I'm doing.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Tara. And I'm curious to find out a little bit more on when did the penny drop for you in terms of, I'm taking on all this learning, as you said, you started off with wanting to know more, wanting to listen. When did that for you change from, okay, I'm wanting to learn, I'm wanting to listen, and actually, no, now I want to take action?
So the reason why I decided to, to take action was after the learning, I thought, there needs to be something. You can't just learn about this, in my opinion, and not do anything. I felt a calling to just get involved, and I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just wanted to raise my hand and say, hey, I'm here. And so one of the businesses that I was at previously started to build a lot of networks, for women networks, and diversity and inclusion networks and mentoring networks. And so I just started to volunteer and say, hey, I'm here. And I became kind of a chapter lead in Canada for one of the networks. And I like to call myself a positive disruptor, because I think you can disrupt in a positive way and a negative way. So I guess what I decided was that I would try to use some of my privilege to have a voice for those maybe that didn't have a voice. And I don't want to make it sound like I come from organizations where there was horrible culture. It's not true. Especially, the last organization I was at, that wasn't the case, but there's always opportunity for growth. And I think there was some low hanging fruit, if you will, to give the corporate term, that could be raised. And so that's kind of how I started to get involved. And then, I'm almost done. I started to take like a couple little, DEI courses through LinkedIn, through some different programs, and started to really engage in some DEI networks and listen to people talk about the importance of diversity. And then currently I'm very close. I'm just at my capstone project of completing a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging certification. And it's been incredible. It's taken me a while. We all get busy, but I'm actively working on it. And through my journey, through that certification, I now see that there's just so much more opportunity to invest in business, DEI in business.
Yeah, it's great that you're continuing your learning. I don't think with DEI it doesn't stop. It's a continuous learning curve. But I think it's great to hear that in the position that you're in, you're still open to wanting to learn more. And you can see the value in doing that in the organization that you're in, and how it will better it. And actually, that kind of leads on to my next question for you: is why is DEI going to make Zūm Rails better and different?
Great question. So I'll start by saying that we're in a situation where, as a new company, we're a 2-year-old company, we don't really have any trailing concerns or items that need to be addressed urgently. So I guess I'll answer this in general by saying, I'll talk about the things I believe that make any business different when investing in DEI, including, Zūm. So simply put, I believe diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging encourages higher level of engagement, productivity, and innovation that contributes to increased revenue, deeper trust with the organization, and overall career satisfaction, and decreased employee attrition. And I believe this because I've seen it and I've experienced it through my years of leadership and my many, many years as a frontline employee. So what I think helps me be a good leader is that I know what it's like to be on the front line. I did data entry, I took the calls, I built the terminal files, I got yelled at by the customers. I can relate to those who I work with. And I worked my ways up through the ranks. And I know that during that time, that when I felt, or anyone, when they feel like they can be open, when I felt like I could share my true thoughts and concerns, that I felt listened to, I felt heard, I felt respected. And in my experience, that's really all that people want. They want to know their voice is valuable, that they're being included in voicing their opinions about decision-making that affects them, and that they're truly part of the team and not just a body filling the seat. So again, speaking of privilege, I recognize that as an executive and decision maker, it's easier for me to have an audience that will feel like they have to respect my feedback because there's that authority aspect. But I would like to foster an organizational culture where everybody feels like they can be heard, regardless of what their title is, or if they're the only person in the room challenging status quo. And I think that is what makes business different, is people feeling like they're people and not numbers. And I guess, you know, to couple with that, I do mentor a lot of different people, and it's really telling for me, you know, during the Great Resignation, which is still happening, to see the shift in the reasons why people want to join an organization. So my experience was that it used to be mostly about salary and career growth, and those are always going to be important components. But now there's a shift that culture and DEI efforts have become much more of a priority for those who are looking for new opportunities as well. And I guess just on a little bit of a side note, for my advice for those who are looking for new employment is to ask every single person that you speak with during the interview process, the hiring process, to explain culture at the organization. Do the comments align? Are they using the same verbiage? Do they have a hard time explaining what their culture is like? I suggest, you know, asking about what's most important to you as someone who's looking for a new role, like what's your commitment to DEI this year? What goals, what targets do you have? And so again, I think this is important for businesses to take note, because culture matters. Inclusion matters. People, you won't even get someone in the door, let alone get them to stay at your organization, if you don't start investing in that feeling where people feel good when they come in every day, that they feel appreciated. It matters, and it's a big shift, and it's an exciting shift for businesses that are paying attention.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's just, sometimes I feel like it just seems common sense. Is it not just common sense? I mean, would you not want people who are working for you to enjoy coming to work, to feel like they can, that they feel like they're heard, to not have to feel alone, and that they're included in the conversation, and that they're actually contributing to the success of the business? Yeah, so I feel like it seems as though the idea, it just seems like, how have we not done this from before? Like, why is it only now, it's taking us only now to have these conversations and to implement these important strategies in our organizations? What do you think is one of the key things that organizations need to stop doing in order to make that their company more diverse and equitable and inclusive?
So I saw a quote recently from Dana E. Crawford, who I think said it best. And I'm not going to quote her, but basically the synopsis was: if you are in a leadership role and you are asking your staff to volunteer for your diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, you are creating a toxic environment. Pay for what you value, incentivize to motivate. Good work is not cheap work. If your organization really cares about making a difference, then they need to invest, or you need to, if your organization, if you care about making a difference, then you need to invest in the difference you want to see. Build goals, targets, mission statements that align with your DEI values, which you should have, and that should align with your core values, and evaluate the success of those values, of those achievements, through an annual review process, the same way you would with any other business objective you set for the organization. Being inclusive does not mean changing your logo to a rainbow during Pride Week. It is a very large pet peeve of mine. It doesn't mean anything if there's nothing behind it. Actions speak much louder than words and symbols. If you care about your environment, then you'll do something about it. And I guess the other item I'll shout out is, stop saying you have a great culture if you allow leaders and high-performing staff to bend the rules. So there's another great quote, and I don't know who said it, but it's that your business culture is defined by the worst behavior you allow. And that is something that sticks with me. And if you don't have policies in place that clearly define what acceptable workplace behavior is, you should not walk, but run to make that happen. And every single person in the organization needs to be held accountable for the standard you set.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I would advise. Pay for what you care about, invest, and don't just stick a flag on your logo for the month of Pride Week. To me, it's insulting. If you're going to be an ally, then find out what that means. What's important inside your organization. Survey your people, see what they need, see what they feel is missing, talk to them about actions, and then set those actions in place. And yeah, again, I've seen it time and time again. I've heard it time and time again. You have a leader or someone who's been with the organization for a long period of time and they go, oh, well, that's just how they are. They don't mean any harm from it. Then that's how your culture is defined.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think sometimes from an individual perspective, I know myself where I was experiencing microaggression, or I saw someone doing something that they, or a C-suite doing something that wasn't really in line with the policy that we have in place, and you can see them get off with it, like, and literally not even get scathed with any sort of disciplinary action, nothing like that. But yet you have an employee that is at a lower level, who may well have done something very much similar, not too different, and I know you no longer see them again. They've had disciplinary action and they've left. So I think it's so important to set the rules so that they're fair for everyone and that they fairly apply to all, no matter where you are in the organization. And I think that only then will show to everyone else that actually, you know what, we're all here, we all belong, and it's fair.
Yeah.
Being treated fairly.
Yeah. It's part of a little bit of part of the equity piece of it, right? Where, everyone should be treated fairly based on, who they are in the organization shouldn't change the policy and the behavior. It's like, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
that means nothing. It means nothing. And it destroys your reputation as a brand, and your employees don't take you seriously anymore. They go, oh, look at me, I have to come in every day at 9 to 5, but Sam over here, he's able to come in, at a different time because I heard he's dating, this person in the organization, or, we could come up with 1,000 examples. The reason I bring up that is because I think that's one of the differences, is that there are policies in place for the way that you're expected to show up, being on time, getting your work done, hitting those objectives, but the cultural policy sometimes is not strong enough, and it allows for shades of gray, which is not okay. And it causes conflict inside the organization for sure. And again, it's just the employees don't take you seriously. They don't take leadership seriously if they see that someone is allowed to do something different than everyone else. And your example is perfect, that someone else gets, they have some kind of disciplinary action for something that someone else is doing that they don't, and everybody knows. It's so funny when they're like, well, this is private. No, it's not. Everybody talks about it. We're open, you can live stream anything and everyone's going to find out about it in 2 minutes. To think that I'm not promoting that there shouldn't be things confidential, but to think that people don't recognize that and that they see it and that it's obvious is not right. Everyone knows what's going on. They see it, they hear it, they feel it, and they fear it. They fear it as well.
So moving on to my next question for you, Tara. How do you find the balance with your work and your personal life? Because we've talked about DEI and the human element. How do you find the balance?
The work-life balance question.
Mm.
I'm not great at it. I get better as the years go by, but I will tell you, at the beginning for me with COVID, it was very challenging. I thought it was bad before. It got really bad for me for about 6 months because my office was my kitchen. So I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and do a little bit of work. And then, I'd go watch TV, which right beside, and then come back and, oh, I'm grabbing a snack and, oh, there's my computer. So I didn't do, I think I'm a work in progress always. But, for the DEI journey at Zoom, I'm just starting out. So I think I'll definitely need to come back in like 6 months or a year to talk about how, if I'm stuck to my commitment to avoid burnout.
Yeah, totally. It's
yeah.
recorded. This is gonna be recorded. So
yeah, we'll do like a side by
yeah,
side.
we could do a side by side for sure.
Our goal right now is to define and build policies, just like what we talked about, related to what we'd like our organizational culture to look like. And we know as we grow, there's an absolute need to put those DEI pillars in place that we can all uphold. And I find this especially important as a company that functions 100% remotely. So, in my past lives, I would say that culture was built around the water cooler or, grabbing a coffee. And it's not that way anymore. And I think there needs to be a more concentrated and dedicated effort invested in what culture means when it's not free muffins on Fridays, or everyone gets candy on Halloween. Like there needs to be more there needs to be more effort put into it. So I guess what I'll say for that work-life balance, I'm really grateful to be part of an organization that's this young and wants diversity and inclusion to be part of its story. So it's really unique. And again, a big reason why I joined Zoom and what's exciting to me about Zoom. So back to the question. The way I plan, here's my commitment. The way I plan to avoid burnout for my Chief Diversity Officer responsibilities is to build a foundation, one that we can scale and grow from. And the way I'm approaching this is with the support of our people and culture, HR leader and CEO, by just to start, who are we and what's important to us? So Rome was not built in a day. We're going to attack this in bite-sized chunks and, focus on taking steps to get there and working not only with the leaders, but the rest of the organization when we talk about, what steps we're going to take and make sure it aligns. And things that I talked about, surveying the staff, saying, hey, we've found these, we've identified these 3 areas that we think we can focus on. Where would you like us to focus first? And what would you like us to focus on? Because I think that's a big piece that a lot of leaders or organizations miss, is they stress themselves out on what to work on, and they have this wonderful pool of feedback. It's about the organization. Why are you not talking to the organization? Ask the people who make up the organization what's important to them and what they want to see. So I think that's, again, that really has to do with, inclusion and diversity. You have 6, people, I was about to say 6 white men sitting in a boardroom. Hopefully that's changing, but really that's what it used to be, right? You have 6 people sitting in a boardroom who haven't touched the front line in many years, making decisions about what they have decided is important for their organization. And I think that's, that kind of goes down to, it trickles down to a leadership rule I have, which is the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule. So do unto others as you want to be done unto is the golden rule. And that needs to change. We need to live our lives from the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they want to be done unto. It's not about us. We're where we are, and most people who are sitting in an executive level are happy. They're at a C level, they put their time in, they're in a good place. It's not about us. It's about the people who make up our organization, asking them what they want to see and then making it happen, and leaving our egos and what we think out of it, and just being advocates. There's that word again, advocates for the people who are inside the organization.
Yeah, and I think advocate is a great word. It's a word that is used. I don't feel like it's used enough actually. So no.
Well, we could hang out. I'll use it all the time. Advocate,
Yeah.
advocate. Yeah. I think it's the right word, I think it's the right word to represent who we can be as a leader, who we can be as a colleague, who we can be as a friend, to give back, to mentoring others. Just advocate for people, just care about them, just want them to do well, let them be happy. It doesn't, it just makes us all better. I'd rather work with 100 happy people than 100 people who feel like they're just numbers,
I've so enjoyed our conversation, Tara. I mean, just before we part our ways, is it something a question that I ask all the leaders that I speak to before we leave? What advice would you give to the DEI leaders of tomorrow?
That's a wonderful question. And it's truly advice that I'm taking myself, which is start with the pillars, the foundation, somewhere you can scale from, and just start. So maybe what I can do is I'll share what my roadmap looks like, and maybe that will help inspire some of the leaders of tomorrow, or even if you're not a leader now, for you want to be a leader for tomorrow. So I think the first thing that you start with is you need to determine your mission statement. Why do you make your product? Who do you serve? How do you add value? These are important questions to ask to help determine why you exist and how you want to be represented. And there's many of those questions that you can ask and answer those questions, and then do the 5 whys. So why do you make your product? Because, to help the consumer. Why? And then that why, dig down to the depths of the real reason of your existence. And then next, I think I do think you need to go in this order, is you determine what your vision statement will be. What's going to be your big, bold, fantabulous, outrageous goals that you want to hit in the next 5 to 10 years? It needs to be something that you actually have a chance to achieve, something that you can share with the whole company that gets them excited, and it should be vivid and engaging and tangible and easily digestible, so people should get it as soon as they hear it. If you have to explain it, you got to rework it. And then next, I think the focus becomes, what are your core values? How should your employees act to achieve the organization's vision? What are the 3 to 5 guiding principles by which the business navigates by? And they should be so fundamental that they do not change. So just meaning, don't confuse them with the business strategy. Don't confuse business strategies with core values. And it's really like what the business stands for and will uphold at any cost. And all of those need to align, and they all should be the foundation of how your organizational culture will be built. And it should align with your DEI values. It should be very easy inside of your mission and your vision and your core values to have that assessment of whether you're upholding, the principles that are important for inclusion and belonging and, for the organization. And then I think, one of the fun things that I would say kind of as the last piece is build your rituals. how do you engage and how are you going to reward? Is it going to be every time you hit a milestone, everybody gets swag? Is it service awards? Is it one time a month? Everyone's gets to Uber their lunch and they get to expense lunch and everyone eats together while they're playing trivia. Rituals matter, and I think it makes a big difference in bringing the business together. Talk about inclusion. Everyone gets included in those rituals, and just like in our personal life, I think we can all think of holidays or events that at Easter or during Hanukkah or whatever your religious or family ritual is, that you do something. My mother was Jewish and my father was Christian, so we did Chrismukkah, and we would get to do some Hanukkah stuff, and then we also got to do some Christmas stuff, and that was our ritual, and it meant something to me, and it's something that I've continued on with many years later. So I think it's one of the biggest parts of bringing people together and really helps with that sense of belonging.
Well, Tara, thank you so much again for joining me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation and I appreciate all of the information and insight that you've given our listeners today. How can our listeners connect with you?
Oh, thank you for asking. Please find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. I'm very active on there. And it's Tara Wilson. I can send you over a link, and if you want to post it somewhere, but it's at TARAWILSON, and Zūm Rails is spelled ZUM space RAILS.
That's great, Zara. I will have all of your connecting links here on when we post up the podcast, so everyone will be able to easily locate you and connect with you. No problem.
Wonderful. So I'll be knocking on your door in about a year, and we'll reconnect to see how the journey's going.
Yeah. Yes. And I wish you all the best in with Zūm Rails and your role and your career. And I really do look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,